there is a photograph taken in the summer of 1958 in a small town in Jalisco. A woman named Soledad stands in the doorway of a house with whitewashed walls, squinting a little against the morning light. She is 56 years old in this picture. She has raised 7 children. She has never seen a dermatologist. She has never heard the word serum. She has never once spent a single peso on a cream that came in a jar with a French name on it. And her skin is flawless. Not flawless the way a magazine is flawless, flawless the way a river stone is, smooth, even, lit from somewhere underneath. When her granddaughter found this photograph decades later in a shoebox, she did not recognize her. She thought it was a woman in her 30s. She turned the photo over to read the date written on the back, and she had to sit down. Soledad did nothing that we would call skincare. And that is exactly the point. Because here's the strange part. The women in these old photographs, the abuelas, the tas, the women standing at the comal at 60 with faces that refuse to tell you their age, they were not luckier than us. They did not have better genes than you. What they had were a handful of habits so ordinary that nobody in the village ever thought to write them down. Nobody had to. Everyone did them. Then something changed, not the women. What changed is what this video is about. Before number 10, subscribe. This is exactly the kind of story this channel exists to tell. Hit that button and then let's go. Soledad washed her face with water. That was nearly the whole of it. In the morning, cool water from the well. At night, a little warm water, and on the days her skin felt tired, a paste of ground oats, avena, worked gently into the cheeks and rinsed away. No foam, no squeaking clean feeling, no tightness afterward that the commercials taught us to call freshness. That tightness, dermatologists now know, is the sound of your skin barrier being torn down. The thin layer of natural oils and lipids that holds water in and keeps damage out. Strip it twice a day with a harsh foaming cleanser, and the skin spends the rest of the day in a panic, trying to rebuild what you removed before breakfast. The foaming cleanser category did not exist in Soledad's town. The first sulfate-based facial washes, the ones engineered to strip and foam and squeak, arrived in the American bathroom in the post-war decades and were sold on a feeling, not a result. Today, the global facial cleanser market is worth several $billions a year, and it is built on a problem it quietly creates. Strip the skin, then sell the moisturizer to replace what you stripped. Soledad never entered that loop. She never had to. Her barrier was never broken, so it never needed repairing. Ask any dermatologist alive today what causes a face to age, and they will tell you the same thing. It is not the years, it is the sun. Research has shown again and again that as much as 80 to 90% of what we call visible aging, the lines, the spots, the loss of firmness, is not time at all. It is ultraviolet light. Photoaging, sun damage, accumulated one unprotected afternoon at a time. Soledad knew this without a single study. Not as science, as survival. She did not lie in the sun. She moved through her day in its shade. A rebozo over her head and shoulders walking to the market. A white hat in the garden. The hottest hours of the afternoon spent indoors, where it was cool, where the work was. The midday sun was not a thing you chased. It was a thing you respected, and you came back out when it had softened. We did the opposite. We were taught to want the sun. We were sold the tan as health and beauty, then sold the bottle of protection we forget to reapply, then sold the laser to undo the damage from the bottle we forgot. Soledad's protection cost nothing, and never wore off. It was a shawl and the good sense to stay out of the worst of the light, the most powerful anti-aging tool in human history, and she wore it over her shoulders. There was an aloe plant, Spila, growing by the back door of nearly every house Soledad ever lived in. When her skin was burned or dry or irritated, or when a daughter came home with a rash, she did not reach for a tube. She broke off a thick green leaf, split it open with her thumb, and pressed the cool, clear gel inside directly onto the skin. That gel, fresh from the leaf, is one of the most studied healing substances in the natural world. It calms inflammation. It holds water against the skin. It helps the surface repair itself. And it does all of this within minutes of being cut, before any of it has a chance to break down. Here is what happened to it. The aloe was put in a bottle. To survive on a shelf for 2 years, it had to be diluted, preserved, thickened, and perfumed, until the product on the shelf today is often 2 or 3% aloe and the rest is filler. The plant by the back door was 100% of the thing that worked, and it cost nothing, and it regrew the leaf you took. The industry took the most generous plant on earth and figured out how to charge you for the smallest possible amount of it. When the avocados were ripe and one had gone too soft to slice for the table, it did not go in the trash. Soledad mashed it, sometimes with a little honey, sometimes alone, and pressed it onto her face and her daughter's faces while the beans finished on the stove. 15 minutes. Rinse. That was a facial. Avocado is almost pure skin food. The fats in it are close to the fats your own skin makes. The vitamins in it are the exact ones the surface uses to stay supple and protected. Laid on the skin, it does quietly what a shelf of expensive masks promises loudly. The mask aisle today is a multi-billion-dollar room. Sheet masks, clay masks, peel masks, each one sold as a small luxury, a treat, a ritual. Soledad's ritual was the fruit that was already in the house, the one that would otherwise have been thrown away. She did not buy the result. She ate half of it and wore the other half. Nothing was wasted, not the avocado and not her money. This is the one that sounds wrong to a modern ear. Soledad moisturized with fat, real fat, a little almond oil, aceite de almendras warmed between the palms, olive oil on the dry days. In some houses, a thin film of clean rendered fat smoothed over the hands and elbows and face before bed. Heavy, simple animal and plant fats that the skin recognized as its own. Because that is what skin is. The outer layer is built from fats, and when you give it fats that match its own, it drinks them in and holds its water. There is nothing modern that does this job better. There are only things that do it more expensively. Then came the era of oil-free. The lotion industry, which is worth tens of billions of dollars a year, taught 2 generations of women to fear oil on the face, to chase the lightweight, the fast-absorbing, the matte. And the skin, stripped of the fats it was begging for, got drier and more fragile and aged faster, which sold more lotion. Soledad never got the memo, because the memo had not been written to sell her anything. She put fat on her skin because her mother did, and her mother glowed too. In the markets, the curanderas sold a reddish powder ground from the bark of a tree. Tepesco wheat, the skin tree, some called it, for burns, for scars, for wounds that would not close, for the marks left behind by a hard life. The powder was mixed into a paste and laid on the skin, and the skin came back smoother than anyone had a right to expect. This was not folklore for its own sake. Tepesco weed has since been studied for exactly what the abuelas used it for: calming the skin, supporting it as it regenerates, helping it heal cleanly. It is one of the reasons so many of those weathered, hardworking faces stayed so unexpectedly smooth. And here is the part that should make you laugh, then make you angry. You can buy tepescoid today. It is in serums and creams sold by international brands, marketed as an exotic botanical discovery, priced like a luxury. The bark that a curandera sold for a few coins is now a miracle ingredient on a glossy label. They did not discover it. They found out what your great-grandmother already knew, and they put a markup on it. On the shelf in Soledad's kitchen there was rosewater, agua de rosas, and there was chamomile, manzanilla, the same flowers she steeped for tea. After washing, she would pat a little rosewater onto her face. For tired or puffy eyes, cool chamomile tea bags or a cloth soaked in the brew. Gentle, fragrant, calming things that soothe the skin without ever stripping it. This is what a toner was supposed to be. Something that calmed and balanced the skin after washing. Somewhere along the way, the toner became something else. An alcohol-soaked pad that squeaked and burned and promised to deep clean and quietly dry the skin out a little more every night. The category sold this thing as proof it was working. Soledad's version smelled like a garden and left her face calmer than it found it. The difference between the two is the difference between a thing that cares for skin and a thing that punishes it and calls that care. Soledad's skin did not begin at her face. It began at her table. And on that table, day after day, was a kind of eating that modern dermatology is only now circling back to. There was caldo, long simmered broth made from bones, rich in the collagen that skin is literally built from. There were real fats and whole foods, the avocado and the egg and the cheese. There was almost no added sugar, because sugar in Soledad's town was a thing you measured by the spoonful for a special bread, not a thing hidden inside everything you bought. And dermatologists will tell you now that sugar is one of the quiet engines of aging skin. It stiffens and damages the very fibers that keep a face firm, a process they call glycation. She drank her water and her aguas frescas, Jamaica, tamarindo, and stayed hydrated through a hot day without thinking about it. The processed, sugar-soaked way of eating that ages skin from the inside had not arrived in her kitchen yet. When it finally did, when the soda and the package, everything came across every border, the faces changed with the food. Not because the women got worse, because the food did. There is a kind of aging that no cream on earth can touch, and it comes from the nervous system. Stress floods the body with cortisol, and cortisol, day after day, breaks down the same collagen that sugar attacks and the sun attacks. A face under constant low alarm ages faster, and every dermatologist knows it. Soledad's days were hard. Let us be honest about that. They were full of labor, and poverty was always near. But they were not wired. There was no glowing screen in her hand at midnight, no notification, no feed designed to keep her alarmed and awake. When the sun went down and the work was done, the house went quiet and dark, and she slept. Long, deep, unbroken nights, the kind in which skin does its actual repair. We traded that away, one convenience at a time. The screen in the bedroom, the light that never fully goes out, the day that never really ends. We are tired in a way Soledad's body was allowed not to be, and our skin keeps the score. She was not calmer because her life was easy. She was calmer because the world had not yet built the machine for keeping a human being permanently switched on. And that brings us to number one. Because everything I have told you so far, the water, the shade, the plant by the door, the fat, the bark, the food, the dark and quiet night, none of it is the real secret. The real secret is the thing that ties all of it together. It is the one thing the entire anti-aging industry needs you never to understand. We are almost there. Here is what I expected to find when I started looking into this. I assume it was genetics. I assumed those women in the photographs had simply been born with better skin than we were, and that the rest was the soft lie of nostalgia. That is not what the evidence shows. What the evidence shows is that ageless skin was never a product Soledad bought. It was the byproduct of an entire way of living. She protected her skin from the only thing that truly ages it. She never stripped it. She fed it from the outside with the plants and fats around her, and from the inside with real food and clean water. She slept in the dark and lived at the speed of a human being. No single one of these was a miracle. Together, they were everything. And that is precisely what cannot be sold to you. You cannot put a slower life and a shawl against the sun in a $30 jar. So the industry did the only thing it could. It took the whole woven, free way of living and cut it into 1,000 pieces and sold each piece back to you in a bottle and told you the answer was the next one. The anti-aging industry is worth well over $100 billion a year now and climbing. The first mass-market anti-wrinkle cream went on sale in 1952, the very years Soledad was glowing without it. The prescription wrinkle creams arrived in the decades after. Cosmetic Botox was approved in 2002, and an entire culture of procedures grew up around it. Every one of those arrived as a solution to a problem, and the problem was the absence of the life Soledad simply lived. She did not have ageless skin because she fought aging. She had it because nothing in her world had yet been engineered to age her and then charge her to fix it. One of you wrote something under the last video that I have not been able to stop thinking about. You said, "My grandmother washed her face with nothing but water her entire life, and at 82, she had fewer lines than I have at 45, and I have spent more money on my face than she spent on her whole house." Hundreds of you liked that comment. Every one of you recognized that woman because every one of you has one in your family. We did not lose some secret. Someone took the world that made the secret unnecessary and sold us a shelf of bottles in its place. Soledad Vega passed away in her 80s, in the same town where that photograph was taken, with skin that the young nurses at the clinic could not stop remarking on. Her granddaughter still has the photo from 1958, the one she could not believe was a woman of 56. It sits in a frame now, on a shelf, next to a small drawer that holds 3 serums, a moisturizer, and a cream that together cost more than Soledad spent on her face in her entire life. None of them make her granddaughter's skin look like the woman in the frame, because the woman in the frame was not using anything. She was living a certain way in a certain world, and her face was simply telling the truth about that life. The shade, the plant by the door, the real food and the fat and the long dark nights. None of it cost a thing. None of it came in a jar. And none of it asked her to believe that her own face was a problem to be corrected. So here's what I want you to do. Pick one thing from this list, just one. The shawl against the afternoon sun. The avocado you were about to throw away. The night with the screen left in the other room. Try it for 2 weeks. Then come back and tell me in the comments what changed. The next video is already waiting for you.